And new tornado watch now up in the Kansas City metro area to go along with the other watches that include the Oklahoma City area that goes through midnight. I'll slide this over and get the details of the new tornado watch there for the Kansas City area until 11 o'clock Central Time. And a new tornado watch that's up in that area with the till 10 Central for parts of Minnesota and the adjacent areas of South Dakota for that area where the storms have been firing up in this area. So all told, at least isolated storms anywhere from Minnesota and the Dakotas all the way down through these red shaded areas into Texas. Busy night, Alex.
All right, Dr. Forbes, we now have a live picture coming to us from Elmer as that storm has been rolling through. And this is that storm, Dr. Forbes, that you have seen, the very strong rotation. Difficult to make out much. You know, you can see a crack on the windshield. And there, yes, you can see it right in the middle of the screen, right, Dr. Forbes?
The center, yeah, absolutely. Right where, right above where that person is standing. It's ever so slightly lighter in color than the surroundings. So definitely there. Just ever so slight. It's cone shaped. I think if you put it into my telestrator, it's the other feed coming in here. Definitely a cone-shaped tornado there, maybe partly rain-wrapped. Yeah, there it is. I'm going to try to draw it there. Yes, I got it. It's hard to see in my telestrator, but right there is the cone-shaped tornado. Don't know if I'd call it wedge-shaped at this point. To be wedge-shaped, it has to be wider than it is tall, but certainly a big cone-type tornado there that is kind of hidden in the rain. This white, I believe, is probably a crack in the windshield. They probably encountered some hail and cracked the windshield as a consequence of that. Tornado, a little bit harder to see at the moment. This is probably a good example of what we talk about by storms being partly rain-wrapped. You can see he's putting his windshield wipers on occasionally, so there's a curtain of rain between him and the tornado that is making it a little bit hard to see. You're probably well aware that the visibility goes down when you're driving around through rain, and that same principle applies here. Makes it harder to see the tornado. I'm taking another chance here. I think it's still right in there is where the tornado is. At times the visibility gets a little bit better, so definitely a tornado in progress. This is in the area near or just to the east of Elk City. Oh, this is the Elmer storm.
Yep.
Oh, this is the southern of the storm, the one that I've been talking about, the hook of the day. So this is one that is then getting close as a debris ball and definitely is wrapped in rain. We can see that because what I've been calling the debris ball is bigger in width than I think the tornado's actual circulation. So this is heading east of Elmer toward the Tipton area. So if you're in the area of Tipton, Oklahoma, you need to be seeking shelter in the lowest innermost portion of a sturdy building. If you have a helmet, take that with you. If you have shoes, put them on in case you have damage. You can come out into that without, if you're safe, without having gotten additional damage to your feet, cuts to your feet from all the debris that's laying around. And once you get into your, if you have a basement, go into that. Try to get under some heavy furniture. If you don't have a basement, an innermost sturdy room like a closet or a bathroom that has a lot of walls and some plumbing to reinforce the walls, that's the safest place to go in this dangerous tornado. It's south of Humphreys, east of Elmer, and west of the Tipton area. As I look at the velocity here, it's not quite as intense right now as it had been, but that said, it is still a very, very intense circulation with this. And at times we can see it in the feed here. At times it is very hard to see because of some intervening rain that is surrounding this rain-wrapped tornado. So pretty impressive, Alex.
You know, you're so right, because you say let this be a warning to folks watching at home. These can be very difficult to find. You can't always go outside and see the tornado. We know we've got the tornado in progress. We've seen it a little better at times, but other times it's totally obscured. So let this show you just how difficult sometimes they are to make out and how dangerous those storms with rain around them have been. Now, Dr. Forbes, it looked like at times it had kind of moved over a little bit more towards the left-hand side of the screen, then maybe wobbled a little bit more back towards center. Where would these storm chasers, for the folks at home, be looking at this storm from, do you think?
Well, I think they're looking at it from the south, and the storm itself is moving east, so I think the reason that it's gone from a little left of center toward a little right of center is because of the storm's movement. Now, and it may be coming close to that road. That's a dangerous thing there. They're obviously in the rain now. They've turned their windshield wipers on a little bit heavier. And I think the tornado is, the right edge of it, I think, is just to the edge of the road there. It's very hard to see, and it's even harder to see in my telestrator. But I think it's
headlights.
Yeah, right above the headlights. That's exactly correct. Yeah. Oh, it is really. I'm watching the radar as well while we talk here, and it is tightened. It is shrunk in diameter.
Oh, power flash.
And really tightened. Power flashes. Yeah, definitely a tornado in progress.
All right, David Drummond joins us right now on the phone. He is the person providing this picture. David, tell us what you're seeing. Carl just noted that power flash. We're seeing that tornado. What are you observing?
We have a pretty large tornado just to the right of the highway here, Oklahoma 5, I believe we're on. And I'm getting into some pretty good wind. We had some power lines go down right next to me there.
Yeah, it does look like at times we are losing your feed. How long have you been watching it?
It was hit that formed at the Red River. It was coming across the Red River, and it got really large. And it was probably maybe a mile wide at least at one point. And now it's just a large cold tornado, as you can see.
And we've been watching some of the areas. Can you tell us a little bit about the environment you've been driving through? You know, we've been worried about the town of Elmer. Have you noticed a lot of residences there, or is this pretty rural?
Most of these are really small towns, 400 or 500 people maybe. I'm sorry, I've got an incredible amount of inflow. We're probably over 100 miles an hour right here.
All right, we will let you go. We'll check back in with you when you get into a safe spot, when you feel a little better. I'm here with Carl Parker. And Carl, I mean, this is some incredible video that we're seeing.
Yeah, what we're looking at here is the condensation funnel that is near the top of the screen. But then you see that very sort of broad, linear darkness that's spreading out near the bottom. Mm-hmm. That is the dust envelope. That's what Dr. Forbes has been pointing out. That's been showing up on the radar picture, that debris that's showing up. It's that very large area that really spreads out and will last. It will linger even well beyond the point that the tornado is really well developed. So clearly this is a large tornado that has caused some problems already, churning up a lot of dust and debris. And what's so interesting, and Dr. Forbes, you may want to weigh in on this, there were so many people out on the road watching this thing. This is what we call chaser convergence, and you did not see this 20, 30 years ago. This is a relatively new phenomenon, and it's a little scary in some ways.
It really is. And Carl, now the tornado is become a little bit more cylindrical shape. You can see it now very clearly right at the center of the screen there. This tornado has crossed now into Tillman County. It is about 3 miles west of Tipton and going to head into the area very close to Tipton, Oklahoma, maybe just slightly to the north side of Tipton, Oklahoma. You can see this is very close to Dave Drummond's location here. Now you can see that the tornado's moved off. It's on the very right edge of the screen. Back to your point, Carl, yeah, the number of chasers, maybe it had to do with the movie Twister as well as the amount of video of tornadoes that people are seeing, and tornado chasing has become a bit of a fad. It's to the point where it's becoming dangerous. Some veteran chasers have stopped chasing because of road congestion. The roads can get clogged and dangerous to maneuver, partly as a consequence. Down where this location of the storm is an area that does not, as I recall, have very many roads because there's limited number of crossings of the Red River there down at that Oklahoma-Texas border. So having egress, if the tornado comes toward you here, at times could be a real problem. I'm worried if there's a lot of chasers that are down in this area. They've obviously put their vehicle now oriented it such that their tail of the vehicle is facing into the wind blowing from right to left, just on the, from left to right, just on the south side of the tornado. And they're looking at the tornado out there to the left of them, probably from just slightly to the south or southeast side of the tornado. They're moving now. You can see them moving with the tornado sort of right on the leading edge of their windshield off to the left of the screen.
And Dr. Forbes, how about the fact that you can get so many different types of motions about a tornado. There's that lateral wind, there's the wind that goes upward, and then you've got inflow that's going into the storm, and that can be as much as 100 miles per hour or more going into that tornado.
Yeah, it really can. That inflow, of course, then leads to a very strong upward motion, and so that's upward motion is how then pieces of debris get picked up in the air. Once they go 10 or 50 or 100 feet up, they usually begin to get centrifuged out, and then they sometimes fall out of the sky out beyond the edge of the strongest winds of the tornado and form part of that debris cloud that we sometimes see. So you get this inward motion, this upward motion, and then somewhat of a debris coming. We're seeing here. Here is Tipton. So the tornado just going to the north of Tipton now. A very strong rear flank downdraft that is blowing across Dave Drummond's location there. And we'll take a look at the storm relative velocities here and show there that the tornado, as I pointed out, is right in there with the strong yellows and golds going northbound, the greens going southeastbound, and the normalized rotation now still very, very strong. That goes blue, green, yellow, reds. We've occasionally today seen a little bit stronger than that, but it is still a very, very intense circulation inside of this circulation right in here. I'm going to do a little bit of measurement here. I'll put a marker here and then look and see how wide that is. That circulation is that feature that we're seeing is about 2 miles wide. And so that is not all tornado. The tornado is a smaller feature that is this feature in here that is what we call the tornado vortex signature. So this is part of the almost the wall cloud that has come down to the ground. It's the mesocyclone combined with rear flank downdraft that is producing this bigger rotation and producing this bigger sort of debris ball that we're seeing in here. So I call it a debris ball, but it's not all debris. Some of that is rain that is wrapped around that tighter core of the tornado there. So at any rate, we know without any ambiguity that the tornado is about 1.5 miles north of Tipton and headed eastbound at this point. And let's see if I'll slide this over. It's going to go just to the north of Manitou as it goes just slightly to the north of east. So it's probably going to come to this location. I'll estimate, and then I'll see if I can find I'll put a marker here and I'll toss it back to you guys, and I'll find out how far north of Manitou it's going to go. Probably that's about 2.5 miles north of Manitou. Carl and Alex?
It looks like it's staying just a little north of Tipton. Regardless, they've got the sirens going off in town. So anybody on the north side of Tipton needs to be safe spot now.
Exactly. And if you're just joining us, we were watching just moments ago, live tornado here in southwestern Oklahoma. Really pronounced rotational signature, a very strong tornado with a large debris cloud as well. And the chaser feed that you're watching right now, this chaser was watching that tornado. He's now trying to get himself into a different position to get himself into a safe spot to once again view that tornado. And you can see there's a lot of rain on the roads. You know, it's not an easy task chasing and evading these very dangerous storms, and then you've got wet roads on top of that. It's a lot you have to watch out for when you're doing this.
Blinding rainfall. You know, when we first saw this tornado, it was difficult to pick out in the picture. I mean, you had to look very, very closely because these storms have seen some heavy rain around it, and this is what we tell you. They're not always going to be perfectly visible funnels. So I think when people hear of warnings, they want to go outside, they want to try to catch it.
It's a natural inclination. Yeah,
absolutely.
You want to go and see if you can see it, and a lot of times you cannot see it. And sometimes they're so big, as this one was, that it could be just a wall essentially, not really a definable tornado that's right in front of you. He's in Tifton right now, by the way, and tornado sirens are going off here in Tifton. And again, he's trying to get into a better position to view this tornado, ongoing tornado warning there in southwest Oklahoma.
And very, very soggy conditions. You know, we've been also talking about this part of the country, just how wet it's been, and these storms offering up more heavy rainfall. So, you know, we're going to watch for that threat also as we go forward in time. But around the Tifton area, this has been the storm of the day, but there have been other tornado warnings that we've been watching as well. And this really, though, is the part of the country with the highest torque on a 7. And that's something that we have not seen much of this year.
No, you don't see it a lot. And the reason why is you've got very strong winds aloft that are coming in. You've got a lot of shear in the atmosphere, especially when you talk about what's called the deep layer shear, the difference between the winds in the lowest levels of the atmosphere and then up into the highest levels of the atmosphere. And what's going to happen later today is that we're going to lose some of the instability as the sun goes down. But another thing that happens is that the winds decouple between the surface and then just off the ground about a mile up. And so the low level winds about a mile up actually get stronger during that time, which means that we may continue to see very strong storms well into the evening across this area. It could go for quite a while tonight.
Right, and that would be, for folks at home, the low-level jet that we often talk about that fuels storms during the overnight. But, you know, shear, one of the things that we talk about, whether it's a change in direction with height or a change in speed with height, that can help to get those storms rotating. And that's why we've got such a high risk today.
And let's get over to Dr. Forbes now for the latest on that storm.
Yeah, I'll give you an update on that storm as well as many of the additional storms. Here's the big picture. 3 tornado warnings now in Oklahoma with the storm we've just been watching, the southern one of the 3, and it has obviously had a very large tornado with that. So let's take a look and update on that one, update where it's heading. There you can still see the very well-defined hook. We know that the tornado is in that little curlicue at the end of the hook. We're talking Jackson, Kiowa, and Tillman counties with the tornado warning, and tracking that hook area and allowing for a little bit of general left or right motion. Should be coming toward the Indiahoma area from right now just north of Tipton, Indiahoma, about 6:43. Here's the circulation. The whole storm wraps around, makes the curlicue. The tornado's inside that curlicue heading eastbound with here still a very well-defined circulation in there, perhaps not quite as strong as it was, but still a big tornado by all indications in progress here. Then going to the storm next up the line, we've just lost the tornado warning on that one that was coming right around the Clinton, Oklahoma area, but we do have a brand new warning that's up in Major County, so I'll come up and get that one. We're talking about a storm there that is in Major County around the Clio Springs and Fairview areas, and let's see if I can track that one out on the fly here. The possibility of a tornado there coming toward, and I'll take the warnings off so that we can see that. Coming toward the area around Dane, 619, around the Fairview area, the Ringwood area, coming there about 649. So dangerous storm there. That one is part of what had been a line has broken down into an individual storm, so that's never a good thing when that happens. We like to see storms going in lines to reduce the tornado threat. We do not like them going back into individual storms. This is one that most of the time has been a line heading up across areas north and east of Emporia, heading toward the Kansas City area, Douglas, Franklin, Osage counties. Still tornado warning now in New Jersey, Morris, Somerset counties. Let's go to Carl for that.
Yeah, that's right. This is now driving off towards the south, and it's moving towards Plainfield, getting right across Route 287 right now, also dropping down towards 78, and is eventually going to get towards Plainfield and perhaps towards Linden. So this is now moving towards the southeast at 25 miles per hour. Want to take a look at what's going on the high-resolution radar and show you what's happening inside the storm. And, you know, as compared to what we've been watching in Oklahoma, we're not seeing as strong of a rotation, certainly, but there is rotation that is showing up on this cell. So that's how we normally look at the storms. That's reflectivity. And then right in here, you've got wind that is surging forward right through there, and then an inflow notch in there. So a tornado likes to sit right along that interface in there. Again, it's not the most pronounced rotational signature, but enough to warrant the tornado warning. And that part of the storm, you see that little inflow notch right there, that's where it's going to be sitting if it's happening. That is now coming into New Vernon, so you need to take cover there. And then eventually it looks like it's going to be coming into areas around New Providence and Sterling. That's moving southeast at 25 miles per hour. Again, this is northern parts of Jersey, but we've got storms in other parts of the country as well.
Oh, you know it. I mean, we've been watching parts of the Northeast. We've seen from the D.C. to the Baltimore towards even the Philadelphia metro area, but also back into Minnesota. That was one of the threat areas today, and we have seen those storms with tornado warnings in effect.
Yeah, there's a whole string of storms right now that's in the western part of Minnesota, and there is a tornado warning on one of these cells now. There were several tornado warnings counties. A lot of them have been allowed to expire. Right now, the tornado warning is in effect for Swift County, and that includes Hays. That's right along Route 12, and that's going until 6:45. Now, we did get a report of a multiple vortex tornado in Swift County, about 7 miles southwest of Murdoch. There you see the 2 reports of tornadoes that we saw right there. We're looking fairly high up in the cloud because this is fairly far from the radar, so getting some difficult returns here. We've got right in here, this is what's called range folding, so it's a little harder to see, but clearly there's an area of rotation, mid-level rotation in that storm. And again, we've had confirmation on the ground, so an ongoing tornado warning for this cell, and that's moving north at 30 miles per hour. Also, quarter-size hail is going to be a threat with that cell.
All right, so something to watch for. Now we go down into the plains where we still have the threat. And, you know, I want to take you actually to Elmer, Oklahoma. You know, we've been watching this storm, you and I, and we've got. There was that power flash you mentioned, and you can see that cone-shaped tornado, difficult to make out. It's not perfect, but you can see right in the middle of the screen, that's where we've got that darker shading towards the ground.
Yeah, and the thing that really stands out here is that sort of a bowl-shaped feature near the bottom. That is that dust envelope. That's what shows up on the correlation coefficient. When we see a debris ball, that is what you're looking at right there. So there's this sort of a cone-shaped feature. That's the cloud that's coming down right in the middle of the screen. And then you see that sort of a wider feature spreading out from that. And oftentimes you'll see that dust envelope keep going even as the tornado begins to weaken. There's still a lot of motion in there. It takes a long time to spin down. It'll go on for a while.
And it's interesting because it's a little bit more of a transient feature, whereas the tornado kind of remains similar in shape. Like we're looking at this video now, you can almost see the debris kind of being thrown off on the sides.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a centrifuge kind of throwing it out, kind of spinning it outwards. There's another look. This is a photo of that same tornado, and you notice here how low the cloud bases are. So it's a very humid environment, and that's a critical part of tornado forecasting. When you've got a very low cloud base, then a circulation that develops in the cloud doesn't have to reach as far to get down to the ground. That's an important part of forecasting tornadoes. Let's get over to Dr. Forbes now.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And these last couple of views that we've had, I think I would say that this is a wedge tornado, wider than it is tall between the ground and cloud base. So that's the term for when we use the word wedge. This whole action that has been going on in Texas and now moved into western Oklahoma is a result of a disturbance that's embedded in this big counterclockwise upper low with cold pocket aloft. But it's not the center of that action. It's the edges where the action takes place. And in particular, can you see this little mini swirl that's come out of Arizona, New Mexico, the leading edge now kicking across the Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma. In blue, these big high-top thunderstorms firing up there, and on the northeastern flanks of this, even up into parts of Minnesota, as Carl was showing, with tornadoes there. So still 2 tornado warnings in Oklahoma, southwestern with a big wedge tornado, and we've had a tornado warning up in Major County as well. So let's take a look at the southern storm here. We're still talking about a tornado, very well-defined hook echo there. Jackson, Kiowa, Tillman counties off to the north and west of Frederick. That hook is where the tornado is sitting, and that is just to past the Tipton area now. Let me update the timeline on this, and that will be coming toward the Indiahoma area and the Cache area, 645, 654, as that part of the circulation moves east. Here it is, and I really zoomed into this. The whole hail core of this wraps all the way around with a storm. The whole storm is spiraling in with this forward flank downdraft wrapping around into the rear flank downdraft and then turning into this little curlicue in there. And it's inside that little curlicue is where the tornado circulation is. Doesn't take much imagination to see that, does it? The yellows and golds going northbound, the tight blues going southbound. And so that is the tornado vortex signature there. And then beyond that, you can still see all this big wide area here that is rotating as well. So that's part of the whole rotating, what we call the mesocyclone of the storm, and that is shaping this whole big spiraling pattern down in this particular storm. So very, very dangerous, potentially deadly storm moving across that area. Then jumping up to the northwest parts of Oklahoma, Major County, heading toward the Fairview area. Supercell thunderstorm here with a gust front surging southward on that. Circulations along that likely to produce a tornado again. I need to do a little updating on this one. I'll slide that off to the east. The threat now coming toward the Fairview area about 632, then heading toward the Lahoma area about 7:02. So dangerous storms in there. We've lost our tornado warning, but you can see what's ahead here as storms are heading from north and east of Emporia, Kansas, up toward the Kansas City area. So dangerous storms there. I think my speed on this is probably going to be a little fast, but I'll try this just in case and do on the fly here, tracking the storms and taking the warnings off so we can see that. It probably is going to come into the Kansas City area around 7:46 or perhaps a little bit after that. I may not have used quite the right speed on this. There on the left, you're seeing this storm, Canton Lake, Oklahoma. You're seeing the whole cloud there wrap around from upper left to far distant at the lower center, and that's a bluish area to the left of that is their heavy rain area. You're seeing the rear flank downdraft wrapping around. So Carl, Alex, busy night is in progress, and we have many hours to go before these storms take a wane. Yeah, and you know, we've got reports in Tipton of large farm equipment thrown and twisted everywhere, but also a threat into parts of the Northeast.
Yeah, a tornado warning now in northern Jersey, just outside of New York City. This is for Morris and Somerset counties. That is moving southeast at 25 miles per hour. The most dangerous part of that storm coming down across 78 there, coming into Plainfield at 7:42. Much more on this storm coming up just a couple of minutes.
There are nearly 4 million miles of road in this country. They lead us home and away to places we love and places that need our love.
Houses are literally obliterated.
That's where you'll find RAM and the First Response Team of America, helping storm survivors.
We've got a lot of equipment in town.
And restoring hope.
Thank you!
Follow the team's journey all this year on the Weather Channel and weather.com. RAM and the First Response Team of America, dedicated to the road to recovery.
We all enter this world with a shout. Robert! And we see no reason to stop. So CVS Health is creating industry-leading programs and tools that help people stay on medicines as their doctors prescribed. It could help save tens of thousands of lives every year. And that would be something worth shouting about. CVS Health, because health is everything.
It's nearly Memorial Day, so hurry into Lowe's for these great deals, like the Charbroil Advantage Series 4-burner gas grill, now only $249, plus the Safford patio set for only $598. So before this Memorial Day, come to Lowe's and enjoy special savings.
I am never getting married.
Never.
Guaranteed.
You picked a beautiful ring.
Thank you. We're never having kids.
Breathe. A little bit here.
We are never moving to the suburbs. We are never getting one of those. We're never having another kid.
I'm pregnant.
I'm never letting go.
For all the nevers in life, State Farm is there.
New Flonase Allergy Relief Nasal Spray. 24-hour relief that outperforms the leading allergy pill. Most allergy pills only control one inflammatory substance. Flonase controls 6. Sees the day and the night. New Flonase. 6 is greater than 1. This changes everything.
Doers. They don't worry if something's possible. They just do it. At Sears Optical, we're committed to bringing them eyewear that works as hard as they do. Right now, save up to $200 on eyeglasses. Quality eyewear for doers. Sears Optical.
Termites like to use stealth. They live underground and build mud tubes, little tunnels made of chewed wood, mud, and I say this delicately, they're poop. To sneak into your home. But I know all about their covert operations. Using my flow meter, I apply the proper amount your home needs to help keep them from breaking and entering. To catch a pest, you have to think like a pest. Not just for any home. For your home. Orkin. Pest control down to a science.
Constant Contact makes it easier than ever to connect with customers using all the best email marketing tools, like online promotions and email newsletters, so you can help your small business do more business. Try email marketing free at ConstantContact.com.
In a matter of seconds, your life can change.
Watched original program is back.
Things were just going everywhere.
And then it was silent.
This was it.
This is just the beginning of what's to come.
Currently in our area, 81 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Tonight, partly cloudy with a late night shower or thunderstorm. Low 76. Chance of rain 50%. Sunday, mixed clouds and sun with scattered thunderstorms. High 83. Chance of rain 60%. Sunday night, a few clouds. Low 75. Here's our 7-day outlook.
All you got to do is show us something that's amazing out there. We love to see your pictures. Every picture you share, we'll try to share it as well right here on AMHQ.
Already an active afternoon across parts of Oklahoma. You are looking at video from earlier this afternoon, say about 15 to 20 minutes ago, where we saw this tornado around Elmer, Oklahoma, caught on camera, a large tornado. We've gotten reports that this has caused damage, some large farm equipment thrown and twisted on Highway 5 west of Tipton, Oklahoma. And it was around the Elmer area, now continuing to move east. A dangerous storm, just one of many that we are watching and expecting as we go into the afternoon, late afternoon and evening. There's a picture near Elmer, Oklahoma, taken by Braden Morisseau, and you can see that tornado off in the distance. Another really incredible picture that we are getting of this storm in particular, and we continue to follow our chasers. This is a live picture that we're getting from one of those in Manitow, Oklahoma. This is thanks to K4 and perhaps, Carl, looking at maybe the leading edge of a shelf cloud.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a shelf cloud there, even a little bit of a rotation there. You see that little bit of a filament that's hanging down to the left there, just beginning to get out of the screen. But certainly there's a tremendous amount of hail and very heavy rain along with this storm as it's coming through Oklahoma. And the signature that we saw, Dr. Forbes, on this thing, the rotational signature, was just about unequivocal. We knew long before we saw that tornado that there was in fact a tornado on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Extremely strong rotation on that storm. It's the one that's heading toward Manitow right now. The storm up in Major County now has produced a tornado as well. So 2 tornado warned storms in the Oklahoma area. This one primarily from what we're seeing here, as you say, is the shelf cloud that has come out along the gust front of the rear flank downdraft. I'm going to go to my graphics now. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So we'll keep that up in the left in case we get a tornado. Here is the big picture. The satellite picture shows this huge swirl, this huge upper lobe. There's been a little feature that's come across in the base of that from Arizona to New Mexico. It's kicking its way across Texas into Oklahoma, triggering these tornadic storms down here. And then just the jet stream heading north across the areas in Minnesota, triggering storms there. In red, 2 tornadoes. Major County, and then into the counties farther to the south. I'll go to the south counties. We're talking about storm there. I need to slide this a little bit to the right. In Jackson, Kiowa, Comanche, and Tillman County still now with the tornado warning on that. Well-defined hook echo. Look at that. It's still incredibly tight hook echo. The tornado is inside that tight little circulation at the base of that, heading off toward the east-northeast. Here's the zoom in, and that would take it toward the Indiahoma area at about 6:57. It's slowed down a little bit now to about 30 miles per hour. Manitow, it is going just to the north of Manitow. You see it's kicked out a little green line there, and that is probably what we're seeing is that gust front, the shelf cloud along that gust front that's coming right into Manitow. Here's the high-definition radar spiraling around into that tight little swirl right at the end of the hook echo. Inside that tight little swirl is the tornado location. You can see that by the tight yellows going northbound, the greens going southbound. Let's ask the radar, how intense is this? It is still blue, green, yellow, the third level. It was at times a couple levels higher than that, so it's not quite as intense, but still, that said, pretty intense. I'll draw that circulation center there and see if we're still seeing a debris signature inside of that. Not so much anymore. There's one speck of debris there, that blue in there. Most of this is rain that is wrapped around that in the red and purple. So a good sign here at this point, maybe not as destructive recently as it has been in the past, but still could very well be destructive again. It's headed toward those locations that I mentioned. Then up in north parts of Oklahoma, look at the hook echo on that one, is developed north and west of Fairview, Major County. This one has had a tornado around the Orienta area, so this is a tornado produced storm as well. Let me make a slight adjustment to this, and that is heading up toward the Fairview area, then Ringwood and the Hillsdale area. So dangerous storm in progress in this area with again, here in the high definition radar, a tornado, but the purple means that there's been a tornado reported with this. I'll zoom in a little bit more and show you it's very close to the Orienta area and show you the velocities on this one. Pretty complex, maybe a couple circulations there and a very strong one right in there. So maybe an old circulation that is been left behind, a new one that is formed. If that new one is correct, that would suggest maybe there's a gust front that has come out and an intersection of the forward flank downdraft with the rear flank downdraft close to the Orienta area. So one or two circulations coming across this area near Orienta, near Clio Spring, going to head off toward the north of Ringwood. You definitely need to be seeking shelter if you're in the path of this storm. At the left there, you're continuing to see the southern of the two warned storms, a big shield of rain and hail there that you're seeing from the Manitow area. So still dangerous storms in progress. And storms coming up toward the Kansas City area with maybe damaging gusts and some 1-inch hail at least. Douglas, Franklin, and Osage counties, you're under severe thunderstorm warning. And tracking that one out, it's near Topeka right now. Kansas City, I've readjusted the speed on this. Probably it's going to be about 8:30 for that storm to come right into you. But you see lightning there blasting across the picture at the left. So Carl and Alex, the area from Kansas southward is pretty active, but so is it farther to the north. Tell us some more about that.
Boy, did you see the lighting there just a moment ago? And so we're looking back towards where the wall cloud would be located, right? So at this point, it looks like if there is a tornado, it's going to be fairly well rain wrapped.
Yeah, it would be behind that shield of rain. If they're truly in Manitow, then the tornado is north of them by several miles. The tornado at this point, let me take a quick measurement, the tornado is located about 6 miles, 5.5, 6 miles north of Manitow and heading off toward the north and east. So it is definitely there's a big shield of rain between them and where the tornado is. They can't see it at that point.
So you're talking about a rain-wrapped tornado, a very dangerous circulation. And as we were noting earlier, as they were driving up to this location, there was this whole long line of cars on the side of the road, an incredible number of chasers out there. I mean, it looked like there might have been 50 cars in one spot. That does feel like it's got to be very dangerous because you can't be mobile quickly.
Right. You know, these storms can be unpredictable. I mean, we can see them move in a way that we might not have expected watching them in time. And, you know, if you get caught off guard, you need to move quickly, but there's 50 of you that need to do it. Like you mentioned, you're not going to be able to move anywhere quickly. So kind of just showing a dangerous situation out there, especially when we talk about rural parts of the country where we don't necessarily have major highway systems or even a lot of major roads.
And we're watching KFOR's feed right now, and KFOR is telling us that there were actually 60 chasers on this storm. Wow. 60 chasers all sort of moving together, and fortunately the road's sort of wide open. By the way, see the hail bouncing there. You can see it bouncing off the road. It's hard to tell exactly how big that is. It looks like it could easily be quarter size or maybe even larger, maybe even $half size there. And
there have been warnings for up to golf ball size hail.
Yeah, we got a report of baseball size hail with this storm. And look, it's bouncing off the front of the car as well, and can be very damaging to cars. It can just blast those windows right in once it gets to the size of baseballs and softballs. So that is always a threat with these supercell thunderstorms. Now, we do want to...
Golf ball size there, laying on the road.
Probably golf ball size?
Yeah.
And just another threat, you don't want to be out there on the road, even if you think you're away from this tornado circulation. You find yourself in the hail core of these storms, and it can be really difficult and dangerous to be out there driving around.
There's a very sharp edge here between the rain. I'm drawing, telestrating there just off the road behind the trees, and then the rain-free cloud base. So this is generally the area of the storm where you do see the tornadoes with sunny skies just a few miles away from where there's a big shield of hail and rain, and then embedded within that, Carl and Alex, a tornado.
So what direction is he is he headed west now?
I think he's headed west now. He's probably going to try to get in behind it.
Wow. But that seems like it might be a little bit dangerous to try to do that, to go west. But it is still moving generally due east at this point?
Yeah, it's just going slightly to the north of east at this point at about 30 miles per hour.
Okay, so he's going back towards that most dangerous part of the storm. Well, there was CG right there, cloud to ground lightning, and just a remarkable view. The one good thing about chasing in the plains, obviously, is that you can see forever. I mean, there are hardly any trees. There's rolling topography, but not a lot of really high hills. And so you do at least have that advantage, being able to see what's going on from a very, very long distance.
From miles ahead of you.
From miles ahead, absolutely. We should tell you about a few more storms that are going on right now in the northern plains. We've been watching storms in western Minnesota and also dropping down into Iowa. Not a lot of warnings on these cells so far. One of them has been in western parts of Minnesota and northwest of the Twin Cities. There's still now a tornado warning in effect northwest of Wilmar. That is for Swift County going until 6:45. There were a couple of reports of tornadoes with this storm, and that's now moving up towards the Sunburg area and now right across Route 12 there, just past Route 12, and still seeing some rotation now just west of Sunburg, and that is right up in here. Tornado there. In fact, here's a look at the high-resolution radar very clearly. Even though we're shooting from a pretty long distance, we're looking up now at about 8,500 feet up, but we are seeing strong rotation at least the mid-levels of this storm, so we know that is a rotating storm. We've seen that for a while. These storms are right on the warm front, and along that warm front, you've got winds that are converging and moving out a different direction, so it's not at all unusual to see storms rotating in that area.
Yeah, we often look at the warm fronts, and you were mentioning that this storm, we're looking at higher up in the atmosphere and seeing some of that rotation. When they are farther away, remember that radar beam goes up as it shoots away. So for folks at home wondering, well, why don't we look at the lower levels? The radar beam goes up as you move away.
It's going out straight, and the Earth is curving, so it's curving down and away from the beam. We can't go around that curve, so to speak. Yeah. We're also watching storms in the northeast, and most of these have now settled down as compared to what we saw just an hour ago. Pretty dicey situation there at the Preakness in Baltimore as people in the infield were forced to get inside to shelter. That storm came right across Pimlico and it now is weakening as it moves over into Delaware. Also a storm here north of Philly, no longer being warned on, but at least a little bit of gusty wind coming into the Trenton area and north of 276. And then here is the storm that was warned on for a tornado earlier. Now a severe thunderstorm warning for Middlesex, Morris, and Somerset counties going until 8:15. The movement is southeast at about 25 miles an hour, so heads up there in Edison for some gusty wind coming your way. We'll take a look at the high-resolution radar on this, and let me step forward on this in time. And still seeing some wind here. You see where that little bit of green is. Still seeing some wind, not the most pronounced of signatures, but certainly it's going to be gusty coming into Plainfield and Middlesex coming up here in the next few minutes.
And we're talking about the greater New York City metro area, so a lot of people out on a Saturday night. Something you have to worry about when you get those strong winds, down trees. A lot of times we see people in vehicles struck by trees falling. So careful as you head out and about. Just because it doesn't have a tornado warning doesn't mean it can't be a damaging or deadly storm.
Absolutely. And so this feature that's triggering all these storms that's now coming out of the southwest is going to be lifting up into the Midwest tomorrow, and as it does does so, we're going to see more severe weather across the Midwest from the plains here and up into the western lakes. It's going to be another busy day, we think.
Yeah, and today we had the Torcons up to 7 into parts of Oklahoma. We still do, and one of those storms has already occurred into parts of southwestern Oklahoma. Let's take you back to near Elmer, Oklahoma, where we saw this tornado earlier this evening, less than an hour ago. You can see it right in the middle of the screen, and at this point, Dr. Forbes did say it was beginning to become a bit more cylindrical. So at first we had more of a cone shape, and now you're looking at more of a uniform width from top to bottom.
Yeah, I would say at this point that's exactly the case. It went from a cone to one that was a wedge. It was wider than it was tall between the ground and cloud base, and then into that cylinder that you just saw, or you're just still seeing right there. That was recorded earlier. Let's take a look now and do an update on where these 2 tornado warned storms are in Oklahoma. The one that you just seen is the southern of the 2. It has had a tornado, obviously. So has the northern of the 2. These reds are tornado warnings. So let's take a look. We'll start with the southern one. It still has a very well-defined hook echo, not quite as intense, getting more rain-wrapped. So there's circulations in there, but harder to see even with traditional radar. Comanche, Kiowa, Tillman counties, just to the south of Snyder and heading off toward the Mountain Park area is where the tornado is. Now, interesting features there. It is kicking out a gust front, so at times we've seen a shelf cloud along that. And the main body of the storm spiraling around and forming into this hook echo that comes in south of Snyder. But where would you think the tornado is? Well, it might be a little bit harder than it was earlier. But here's the hook echo wrapping around. There's the hook wrapping up. Let's go to the Doppler velocities to find the tornado in this one. It's in there, but it's not nearly as easy as it was before. But there's the tornado with the tight core of it right there. The reds and golds northbound, the blues and greens going southbound. Let's see if it has, well, let's see the rotation level here is still pretty intense. It's up to that. Brand new signature just came in. Brand new scan, blue, greens, yellow, now red with the circulation there. And so a pretty intense rotation that's showing up right in there. That's the tornado vortex signature, folks. And let's take a look, see the debris. A couple little pixels here of green. The reds and purples are precipitation type signatures. The dark blues, when they're in the middle of the tornado rotation area, are for sure debris. This one's a little bit ambiguous in terms of whether that's debris or not. It's certainly a reduced value there. But look where it is. It's in this area that is a wee little tiny curlicue now inside this huge area. So there's several miles of rain from the east, from the south, maybe even a mile of rain from the northeast as you look at this, or try to look at this, before you see what we truly would call a rain-wrapped tornado. It's in there in the middle of the rain and the hail. Very, very hard to see. Now here's the northern storm. It started out as a line. There's a really well-defined individual supercell in the line there that is heading up toward the Helena area. Alfalfa, major counties, you have a tornado warning. And tracking this one out, I'll have to redo this one because it's changed direction. It's going more now toward the north and east. So I'll do that on the fly. There is where the tornado would be. So it's coming up toward the Helena area. Helena about 7:06 p.m. At the rate that it's going up toward your location. So here is the high resolution radar on this one. It has really gotten itself contorted. There with the hook coming around, a very well-defined gust front that has surged out with a rear inflow jet and a notch there of sinking air that is pushing the coming down from the strong mid-levels and pushing this gust front eastbound. And then the storm relative velocities get a little bit broader, not nearly as tight as what we're seeing in the storm down to the south, but a little embedded tornado circulation sitting right in there. I'll draw that one in red so it's easier to distinguish, and go back then to the regular way of the radar, and we'll see that it's right up in that little inflow notch area where the tornado is located. So Carl and Alex, a busy night. We continue to see interesting views down on the southern storm by the storm chaser. The big wall of cloud, I think that's probably under that shelf cloud that I was talking about, with rain to the left, lightning in there, and then clearer skies to the right. Carl, Alex?
Absolutely. You know, you're getting a really impressive look as this storm advances closer. That lightning really lighting up. You get that bluish greenish tint to the sky over on the left-hand side, and then obviously Dr. Forbes said the rain-free side to the right-hand side of your screen, so you get an idea of what exactly is going on within these environments.
Yeah, you know, that bluish color really a function of just the terrific amount of water that is in these storms, and then when you've got a little bit of yellow sunlight hitting it late in the day, it can take on sort of a greenish cast because you're mixing blue with yellow, essentially. But when you see that, you know you've got one heck of a storm, and then you also see how the anvil spreads out well overhead and off to the right there. These anvils, when these big storms blow up, you know, what happens is the thunderstorm will build up as long as the cloud is warmer than the surrounding environment. There's a point at which that stops being the case. That's called equilibrium, and then the cloud stops rising for the most part and begins to spread out and can spread out over vast distances. And in fact, these anvils can cover half a state in some cases, especially when you have these multi-cell clusters of storms.
It is really amazing stuff. And you know, Dr. Forbes, we've been watching this storm that you said has kind of gone through. We saw the hook. Now it looks like it's truly rain wrapped.
That is about as impressive and awesome an aquamarine color there at the left as you will ever see. I don't think I've ever seen a color that bold in a storm before. Look at all that just where we're superimposing the live KFOR, Manitow, Oklahoma. It is really aquamarine in there. That happens as you get towards sunset. Watercolor, of course, is blue. You get a little bit of yellowish kind of tinge coming through the sunset, but only a little of that comes through, and you get that blue sky instead of the gray colored clouds that we typically have. The other thing that I've drawn on here, and I'll redraw it, is coming away from that blue heavy rain and hail area is what's sometimes called a rain foot. Can you see it? This little bit of a darker area that's sticking out there, that's some of the outflow that is coming away and kicking that grayish. And then, as Carl was talking about, some of the big anvil clouds that are up in here with the main body of the storm overhanging. So the edge of the heavy rain near the sort of the gust front of the storm probably is the rear flank downdraft area down on the south side of, and there we get that aquamarine right at the middle again. Very, very impressive. That is just about as blue a sky in the midst of rain and hail as you're ever going to see. It was almost clear sky blue there, at least as I was seeing it.
Absolutely beautiful. You know, it'd stop you in your tracks, but this is a very dangerous storm. Something that I wanted to ask you, Dr. Forbes, I think people at home might be wondering, you know, you talk about how that storm had a really great hook. Now it's kind of worked itself around. Would that show that this storm maybe is maturing? Do you think we'd be nearing the end of its life cycle for people at home?
Well, sometimes storms like this cycle. It has had so much rain and hail wrap around it that I think it's going to choke off the original tornado. But there's an awful lot of unstable air just to its east-southeast. It still has a weak echo region that is wide open. So I do think that it will recycle with a new circulation somewhere probably in the area north of Indiahoma and head over toward the Medicine Park, Oklahoma area. So I do think it is choked off maybe this ongoing tornado. While I talk here, I'm looking. Yeah, I think it's choked off. There may be a tornado still trying to hang in there south and east or east-southeast of Snyder, but I think there probably will be a reinvigoration of this over on the edge of the rain north of Indiahoma or northwest of Indiahoma, and probably not before too long. So the chaser may be trying to get into that very area. It's hard to know exactly what.
And so that would be when you're talking about a storm cycling. You would maybe get a new hook on the southern side or the more favorable side of that storm for tornado formation.
Right, and while it's hard for us to know the exact location of this, while we say this is Snyder, I know it's not downtown Snyder because that's right in the middle of the rain core of the storm, and he's just very, very light drizzle at this point. So I think he has probably gotten himself out to the east of Snyder would be my guess, and waiting for the reformation of the possibly a new tornado out ahead of where the rain has wrapped up the old one.
All right.
It looks like he's traveling north.
Yeah, I think he's traveling north out ahead of the main body of the storm, trying to let the storm come to him and see if it'll put down a new tornado there. There's actually a little bit of lowering right under our titling there. Can you see it? It looks to me like it's a little bit lower hanging. Down right about here. Yeah, right about there, as if it's trying to have a wall cloud or a funnel cloud. I suspect that he's looking at that. This is indeed the area where where a new circulation may very well try to form. So we'll continue to monitor the chasers video here, the KFOR video. From near and I think east of Snyder, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I think we can walk folks through some other areas, Carl, where we've seen storms, because while central Oklahoma, western Oklahoma have kind of been given the top spot with that 7 out of 10 today, there are other areas with a significant threat. We've got 6s, 5s extending all the way up into parts of Minnesota.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because we haven't seen a lot of warnings here across the northern plains. That's going to change tomorrow. It's going to be a really different story tomorrow. But right now we're watching just scattered thunderstorms generally from western Minnesota and back down into western parts of Iowa. We're still seeing rotation on one storm that is now south of 94 and right here just northwest of Wilmar. And so along with that, we've got a tornado warning, and this has actually produced a couple of sightings of tornadoes. This is a tornado warning for Pope and Swift counties, and this is moving northeast at about 25 miles per hour.
All right, and I should mention for folks at home watching that Snyder, Oklahoma storm, we're leaving that up in case we are able to see more of a lowering, perhaps a funnel, while we walk you through some of these other storms.
And we'll take a look at the high-resolution radar here and zoom in, and still seeing some evidence of circulation. Again, we're shooting fairly high up because this is a long way from the radar. It's not as pronounced as it was a few scans ago. Right in there, you see a really pronounced area of red and green indicating a lot of rotation at about 9,000 feet up. That's not quite as strong right now, but certainly it bears watching. And again, these storms have been firing right along the warm front where we typically do find a lot of rotation. And then backing out a little bit, you notice there are a lot more storms that are really beginning to congeal into multi-cell clusters. But because these storms are going to be coming up towards the warm front, it wouldn't be at all surprising to see that some of them do begin to rotate, especially in that same position, basically.
A warm front is always an area that we keep a very, very close eye on for that favorability of rotating storms.
Absolutely. You tend to have winds coming out of the south, and then to the north of the warm front, you've got winds coming out of the east generally. And so where the winds are coming together and from different directions, there's a pre-existing vorticity in the atmosphere, and storms can very easily tap into that.
The northeast we've been watching as well, still dealing with a severe thunderstorm warning around the New York City metro area, but storms really just east of the 95 corridor.
Yeah, you know, and this is really a function of instability. This is sort of a daytime heating thing because we do not have the same amount of dynamics that we have across the middle of the country. So these storms are really settling down right now. That's not a big surprise. Got a little hairy there at the Preakness. Everybody was forced to go indoors for a time. And then farther to the north here, we're looking at a severe thunderstorm warning still in northern Jersey, right along 278 and 95, Middlesex, Morris, Somerset counties under severe warning. And that's going until 8:15. That's moving southeast to 25. Concern here is going to be 60-mile-per-hour wind and maybe some 1-inch hail.
All right, so you know that's a populated area. We're talking about 78 folks driving over that highway, even though you might not necessarily be in that warning at this point. You're going to see the heavy downpours and perhaps those gusty winds. High-profile vehicles 10 and 2. You know, it could get a little rocky as those winds work over the highway.
Absolutely. Now, those conditions that we saw today, that we're seeing today in the Central Plains, will exist again tomorrow when you've got very strong surface winds coming up here, but then very strong mid-level winds coming out of a different direction. So a change in wind speed and direction with height, that creates that vorticity that we talked about in the atmosphere, that spinning in the atmosphere. So when thunderstorms punch up, they'll tap into that vorticity. So we think it's going to be another busy day tomorrow. Not as much of a tornado threat in the southern plains, more of a general wind and hail threat. The tornado threat really migrating up into the western lakes and northern plains. So on the Torcon index, it is a 5 out of 10, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And then we've got a 4 out of 10 in eastern Missouri. Could be another big day for severe weather tomorrow.
So places like St. Louis, like Chicago, Madison, also Minneapolis. We're talking about some more major areas with a high threat. And once again, on a weekend, I know you're not always sitting at your office. You're not always looking at your phone every second. You've got plans to be out and about. The kids have sporting events, whatnot. But if you're in these areas, now is the time to think about where you would go if you find yourself at that soccer field.
Yeah, you know, awareness is key. Just being aware of the fact that there might be storms that could do something really bad. That's really important. And we're still looking at that live feed from K4 there near Snyder, and we're still seeing that amazing sort of bluish aquamarine color there in that storm because of the tremendous water loading in these storms and also a little bit of sunlight interacting with that. Watching for additional rotation in the storm, producing a really well-developed tornado with a huge dust envelope earlier earlier, and still seeing rotation in the storm, but no doubt there's a serious threat for wind and hail along with that.
Absolutely, and we're watching this storm as well as others. Dr. Forbes, there is a new warning you need to tell us about right over parts of Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah, it's just across the border from Oklahoma into Texas. It looks very much at this point like the beginning stages of the tornado warning for the storm we've been following there with the chaser. So let's take a look here. Here's the big picture. We have tornado warning still in northwest Oklahoma, north central, southwest, and this is the brand new tornado warning down here in right near the Red River in across the Texas line there from Oklahoma. Look at the hook on this one, close to Electra, Oklahoma. Tillman, Wichita, and Wilbarger counties here in Texas. You have a tornado warning. Tillman, I think, will be in Oklahoma as this storm is going to head toward the Burke-Burnett area with the storm having pretty well-defined rotation here. Green's going northbound, red's going southbound. So right in there, the tornado vortex signature, that's going to head toward Burke-Burnett, and timing that out could be getting into Burke-Burnett at about 7:37 p.m. Randlet about 7:51. So this is tracking the previous tornado tracked right across the very top edge of the screen here as we see it. So these storms are probably maybe tracking about 30 miles apart. And speaking of that storm, here it is. Comanche, Kiowa counties with a well-defined hook echo still in progress and maybe going to go severe warning. You see here in areas north of Lawton all the yellow, so severe thunderstorm warnings out ahead of that, but still possibility around coming toward the Medicine Park area and the Elgin area about 7:55 with a possible tornado. There is the high definition look at this. I'll slide a little bit. It's off to the north of Indiahoma right now. Let's take a look at the velocities. It is definitely weakened. It is definitely for the moment lost some of its circulation. The biggest circulation we see is right in about here.